At Bankhead Orthodontics or Chesterfield Orthodontics, there's multiple names. We're talking about that, but right here in St. Louis area, St. Louis, Missouri, and I've had an opportunity to work with Lynn and her organization for, gosh, going on 6 or 7 years. And so what we're going to do today, Lynn, for the audience and who's viewing this, is we have practices from around the country. The treatment coordinators, as well as some of the doctors in their offices, are watching this video, trying to enhance the skills of their treatment coordinators. And we've talked about this before, and I've mentioned this to many of the practices around the country, but one of the most important jobs in the practice is the treatment coordinator. And the reason for that isn't that the clinic isn't important, of course it is, but the assumption is they're good. So until we get a yes, all that stuff doesn't matter, right? So what I wanted to do today is just ask you a few questions about your process, and I just want you to be completely honest with me and say, yeah, we do that, no, we don't. Here's why we do some of that, and so I want to start with kind of the initial exam, okay? Before we even get to that, somebody calls in here, okay? Somebody calls in, and they want to schedule an appointment. So when they do that, once they've scheduled, what happens next for you guys?
We are evaluating their intake form for, do they have insurance, do they have other siblings.
Okay.
We verify the insurance, we see if they're in our network, we take all insurances.
Who does that?
The front desk.
So as they're scheduling?
So as they're scheduling, they compile a packet that has what we call a flow sheet.
Okay.
The flow sheet is a checkoff sheet for anyone in the office that will touch that patient's paperwork until the process is completed and they're banded.
Okay.
In there, we like to know, when was their last dental visit?
Okay.
Do they have any pending work that needs to be done? So the front desk is preparing that paperwork. When I, as a treatment coordinator, get that paperwork, I am looking at what is their insurance plan. We are a PPO provider for many insurance plans, so I'm looking at what fee are we going to be set at for that.
Is that something you guys have always done?
Not always. We started doing that about 5 years ago.
Decided to start
To start participating in PPO plans.
How's that worked out?
Very good. Yeah, because we were missing a lot of patients that were, if we're not in their network, they would go somewhere else. So it's been good. You have a little bit of a write-off, but, they have siblings, they have friends.
Right.
It sends the dental plans, the dentists send us these patients because we're in their network.
Right.
So we get these patients, they come in for their consultation, we call them the day before and say...
Let's back up on that.
Sure.
So I call in. Let's just walk through this. Give me an insurance provider that you guys run into. Okay. So I call in. My doctor, my dentist said I should come in. Maybe my daughter needs braces. And so they come in, or they call in. They say, my daughter might need braces. And then how long of a phone call, typically, is that initial conversation with the front desk?
I would say approximately 10 minutes.
It's about a 10-minute call. Okay.
7 to 10 minutes, depending on if they have insurance, if the parent has a lot of questions when they initially call.
Okay.
That can take longer, but typically I would say around 10 minutes.
And do you find that that front desk person in your practice is really good at kind of engaging the patient or making them feel friendly on? Okay.
Yes.
They
know to take your time, answer all their questions, get as much information as we can get before they even come in.
So we're really trying not to process them, we're trying to engage them.
Right.
Okay. So they go through this process, mom starts to feel comfortable, they ask questions about, hey, how'd you hear about us? And, let's talk about, oh, Dr. Sadigi suggested you come over, gosh, we love Dr. Sadigi, and blah, blah, blah. And then they go through the process. Oh, by the way, here's what happens when you come into our office. And then they start, once the mom finally says, yeah, we really want to schedule, then she starts gathering some of this information for you. Insurance information.
Right.
Let's say it's MetLife, okay? So once they gather that data and, let's just paint a scenario. 2 weeks from now, they're coming in. Is that typical, 2 to 3 weeks that you schedule out?
A little sooner.
Okay.
It can be, depending on what the family wants.
Okay.
If they have a busy schedule or if they want a later afternoon appointment, they want to wait till school's out, a holiday break, something like that. But typically, I would say within a week or two, they can get into our office.
Okay. And you have how many locations?
6.
Okay. So, and just to clarify for the audience, how long have you worked for Bankhead Orthodontics?
8 years.
Okay. And recently, you've gone from being their top treatment coordinator to really guiding other treatment coordinators throughout the organization. That's one of your new challenges.
Yes.
And how many treatment coordinators do you guys have?
We have 5.
Okay. And in that process of engaging the patient, helping these other treatment coordinators understand what's going on, tell me the process from once, how do you find out that somebody's scheduled? So and I know you rotate around, put yourself back in, I'm a treatment coordinator full-time at O'Fallon, okay? How do you know somebody recently got scheduled? Let's say you said it's less than 2 weeks, let's say it's in 7 days they're coming in. How do you know that?
The initial appointment?
Yes.
I look at the schedules.
Okay.
I just pull them up. I can access any office from any computer in the company.
Okay, and so it's in there?
Yes.
You can tell when it's an initial exam?
Right. We like, the front desk does, where when you take a phone call, the few things that we like on that appointment schedule is going to be the child's age, the dentist that referred, what are the concerns, and what are the insurance plan that they have. That way, anyone in the office, when we print out a daily schedule, like this is our daily huddle, morning meeting is, you know, what we call it, our huddle.
You do those every day?
Yes, we do those every morning, right before we see, about 15 minutes before we see patients.
Okay.
Kind of briefs you on, you know, this patient has a frenectomy, this patient's getting a D-band, they need the retainer in 2 days, what, you know, what kind of customer service are we going to offer today, what are our obstacles we might encounter today.
Great.
But in that, you can look at the new patient exam column that is underneath the treatment coordinator's name, and it'll tell you, you know, you have 4 exams today, you have 6 exams today. It kind of gives you just a brief overview of their ages that you're seeing. You know if you're seeing a 6-year-old today, it's going to be, you know, a recall appointment, and, you know, or we might be putting a palatal expander in or something. You're seeing a 46-year-old woman today, you know, she might be interested in Invisalign. You kind of know a little bit about what's going to go on in your day. So we have started doing that, which I think is very helpful, just at a quick glance, even for the doctor to know. Like, my next patient is 12. They're, you know, they have a crossbite. They're class 2.
Right.
Kind of lets us know a little bit about what we're getting ready to start.
Okay.
So
I think the morning huddles are great. I think being consistent on those is great because it does set it kind of sets the mood. It sets the expectation for the day.
Right.
Right. And here's what's going on. So initial exam. They schedule. What's the process next from the time they say they're coming in 10 days? What then happens in here for them? What do they get from you? Do they get anything?
They do get, we have 2 ways of contacting them. We either do it through email, where we send them their new patient paperwork, which is the health history and patient information. The health history is very important. We like to know if they have allergies to latex or anything that we should be concerned about before we start the process.
Right.
We also like to know, do they have any concerns from their dentist that are the reason that they've made the phone call, or if it's just that they think it's time.
Okay.
Their other kids have had treatment in another state or with another orthodontist. So we try to get as much information from them in the initial call, but then we kind of are cross-referencing the new patient information to what we've taken on the phone call.
How many of them fill that out?
All of them.
Before
we actually, if they come in and they don't have it, we say, you know, do you mind filling out your new patient paperwork? And part of that is on the second page, which is the health history in our forms. They are required to sign to check their credit.
Okay.
We run a credit check, yes, that is part of our process. It helps us gauge how we can offer financing options for them, what we're willing to offer them. I mean, we'll have people that come in with a very bad credit rating. We're a little bit more cautious.
Sure.
We kind of take into that scenario, how much of that money will we get from their insurance company? How much can we ask them to put down? Is that feasible for them?
Right.
What kind of monthly structure are we going to extend to them? So that form, when they initially come in, most people will have it. They'll send it through email or they'll print it off and bring it in.
Okay.
If they don't, we have them fill it out when they come in, and it gives us a lot of good information as far as where they work, how long have they lived there. That's part of that credit check as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I push back on that, I'm just going to be honest, is I think it's great to get that information. One of the things that people in the audience will be hearing you say, and say, wait, I thought you worked with Gary for many years. In audience, as you guys know, I only make suggestions to practices, and they decide what things they like and what works and what doesn't. One of the things from a wow factor is not that I want to say, that it's not that the paperwork's not important, is that I like to move it out a little bit. So if, if somebody comes in, and they're brand new, and it doesn't always work with a high volume practice like you guys have, but I like to try to move it out a little and get the tour done first and then come back to the paperwork if they haven't completed it, because that's more of a warm and fuzzy.
Okay, so, well, when they come in, I'm actually not at that front desk. I might be in another exam.
Right.
When they come in, they're greeted at the front desk, and they're like, you know, welcome to our office. How are you today? You know, and they're, you know, engaging.
Okay.
The front desk usually will show them how to check in, which lets the doctor in the clinic and our team know that they've arrived.
Okay.
It triggers me. I'll have what we call lighting. It's patient flow. it'll say, oh, you know,
They're
Ashley
here.
Johnson is here today. I know then to approach the front, or they'll say, you know, and they'll say, you know, do you have your paperwork with you today? They'll give them that paperwork.
And they
They're
say, no, I
immediately-
forgot it. I
Right,
didn't
and you
fill
say,
it out.
that's okay, you know, we'll have you fill it out, and we'll let Lynn know that you're here today.
Okay, but they've done
so
some
then-
warm, they've done some
right.
warm and fuzzy.
Right,
Okay.
oh yeah, they initially, right when they walk in, they know it's someone new, they don't
Okay.
recognize them, they're not a patient of ours yet.
Okay,
So they're at the front desk, they turn in their paperwork, I then approach the front desk and I say, hi Ashley, I'm Lynn, you know, are you, hi Mom, you know, Sharon Johnson,
Right.
how are you, you know, shake their hand, give them some eye contact, let them know if the front desk, and this is very kind of tag team, if the
Okay.
front desk has not already said, you know, this is how you sign in, you always want to check in, I then go over that process and say,
do you have them sign in themselves?
yes.
Okay,
We let
that's
them
one
practice.
of the best ideas
We
that
let them
out there.
practice and yes,
Why do you guys do that?
so that they know the next time they're coming in, that's how you check yourself in.
And
And it
so,
gives them, the child a little independence.
okay,
They're really like wowed with the experience of our mouse is round and you turn it like a doorknob and they get to check themselves in. Depending on the age,
Sure.
they get excited about that.
uh-huh,
Gets them very involved.
that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lynn, one of the things I love about you guys doing that, it's a recommendation, and I know audience, this sounds very subtle, but all these little psychological things are important. So there's an old, real quick story, and you'll appreciate this from being in a consultative type position. There's an old story about a salesman that was used to sell plexiglass, you know, unbreakable glass.
Oh, yeah.
Number one salesman in the company every year. They have 500 salespeople every year. He's still the number one guy. They bring him up. They say, chairman says, okay, you know, I got to know, you know, how is it every year you win this award? And he says, well, when I go out to the customer, I have my plexiglass sample, but I bring a hammer with me and I hit it with a hammer. He goes, wow, that's a great idea. So next day, the CEO goes out and buys a hammer for every salesman, 500 hammers. Next year, end of the year, sure enough, that same salesman is number one salesman again, and CEO is just, he can't believe it, and he calls him up and he says, how is it that, you know, you're still the number one salesman? You gave me your best
Your
idea.
tool.
Right. He goes, well, I knew you'd steal that idea from me. He said, so now what I do is when I come in with the plexiglass and the hammer, instead of me hitting plexiglass with the hammer, I give the hammer to the customer and tell them to hit it. And what the point of that is sounds subtle, is you are letting that patient sign in. They're already taking ownership of this experience. Hey, this is my home, or this is where I'm going to be, or
Right.
and it sounds subtle, but it's really important, and that's one of the things I'm really glad to hear you guys are doing. So they're going to go through that experience, they sign themselves in, you guys show them how to do that, and then let's assume paperwork's done, okay?
Okay.
So next thing we're going to do, and then we're going to show the audience kind of how we do this, okay? But after that, then what happens?
I take them on a tour.
Okay?
So I explain to them this is the front entrance now.
How many times do you guys tour patients? Every time, or kind of some of the time, or?
I would say if they're late, I kind of give them a shorter version of a tour.
But you still tour.
I do try to tour them, yes.
I was in a practice recently, and I love them to death, but and they're going to get mad at me when they hear this because they're going to know who it is. And I was
We
asking,
won't say their name.
and I love them. Great practice, great people, do very successful. They do a lot of right things. But we were talking about tours, and I said, "Well, tell me about your touring process." And they said, "Well, we kind of do it." I said, "Well, you kind of do it." Well, sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. And Lynn, here's the challenge with that, right? And I said, can I be honest with you guys without you getting mad at me? And they said, sure. I said, well, that's kind of like saying I'm kind of pregnant, right? You really can't be kind of
Right,
pregnant.
no,
You either
you are or you're not.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's the same challenge with touring, because here's what happens. It's very difficult for me as a treatment coordinator, director like yourself, where you have multiple practices to evaluate, to know what's going really right with one of my treatment coordinators and what needs help if they're not consistently doing steps. Because I look at their numbers and I could say, wow, you know, this week you guys were really good, and this week you weren't so good, and then and you go, did you tour? Well, I'm touring some, and some of them I'm not.
Right.
Then you can't really assess.
I think touring is
Yeah.
a chance to impress them with who we are and what we offer
No
and
doubt.
how comfortable you feel in our building.
How long does that take?
Oh, 4 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, it's minimal
quick.
time. It's, yeah, I mean, you can draw it out, and, you know, if they have, most of them don't have questions. They're just kind of listening, and, you know, I'm
Observing.
Right, they're just like, oh, okay, wow, this is nice, yeah, I
Right.
probably get the feel of it. You know, I take them through the clinic a little bit and say, you know, these are our clinical chairs, this is where you can call back for the appointments.
I
And,
want to
you
talk
know,
about that for a second.
Okay,
I've had a particular practice, very successful, push back a little bit on the clinic component of the tour and say, you know, we're just not so sure we want to take them into clinic because we think it's going to scare them.
okay, now, hold on, I'm gonna
Tell me
interrupt you
about
for a
that.
second.
Okay.
huddle.
Okay.
Lynn has an exam at 11 o'clock today. Little Susie Miller is kind of, you know, she's kind of a patient that, yeah, she starts to cry a little bit, you know, might want to detour that part of the tour. That is what huddle is for. If you have, you know, in the clinical team, the doctors, they know our patients. I mean, by the first time when you've completed that banding, we know them. We have a good feel. Like, how do they react? How do they sit in the chair? Do they need mom by them? Do they, you know, do they just lay back and say, work on me, you know, whatever. That's probably the best part about huddle, is to kind of prepare for that day. If it's somebody that's in a wheelchair, we kind of know, hey, we need to make sure that we have good access and we have good, you know, that everyone knows that we're going to be coming through at this time. Or maybe we'll avoid that because the clinic is not a big area.
So it could depend on who's coming in. It could depend on
who's coming in, but I mean, that's kind of where you use your huddle to your advantage. But
and when you do go through the clinic or you go by a doctor, and I know you guys are on walkie-talkies or...
This is the fun part.
Yeah, tell me about
we go through the clinic and they all know. They have we've had huddle, we have a schedule in front of them. They'll hear on the radio, you know, Ashley Johnson's here, Lynn, you know, your next exam. We come through and they're like, the clinical girls will turn around, hi Ashley, welcome, you know, and the doctor always turns around, looks at him and says, hi, I'm Dr. Bankhead. Now if he's gloved up, obviously sometimes he'll remove his glove and say, hi Sharon Johnson, I'm Dr. Bankhead, nice to meet you.
And let me ask you a question.
And they're like, wow.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because to me, that's one of the most powerful things that you guys do. And when you experience that, when you watch the patient or the patient's mom, what's their body language like when that happens? What do you notice?
I notice this relax. Like, wow, he just said hi to me. Yeah.
Stopped whatever he was doing, knew my name.
Right. Now, if he's with a patient and he's gloved up and he's actually working in the mouth, he will acknowledge them still. No different than being on the phone at the front desk and someone walks up and you'd say, hi,
right,
you know,
exactly.
and you can still continue with your phone conversation. I'll be right with you. Just that acknowledgement. They appreciate that. And I've had patients that, you know, they come in, they sit down, we start talking, and they'll be like, wow, he's busy, but that was, you know, she's like, he said hi to me. I'm like, you know, they're impressed by that. He acknowledged me. That's all they want to be acknowledged.
They want to feel special.
Right. And we've made them feel that way.
No doubt.
You arrived, and we're glad you're here.
And I think it's not even just doctor, which I think is great, but I think it's great that the ladies know too. And they're saying hi. I mean, there's nothing that feels better if I'm thinking about where I'm going to spend the next 18 months to 24 months of my future than knowing that. That's right. That I feel special.
Right.
They know me. That's a power. I just think it's one of the most powerful things you guys do. Something I love to preach about because I knew you guys did that, and I know it has a very powerful impact.
Right.
So once you go through that 4 to 5 minute component. In that process where you're showing them, what happens next? After you go through the tour, do you bring them in here? Or?
I bring them in the exam room.
Okay.
Offer them a seat. Say, you know, if you'd like to sit next to Mom, Ashley, you can. Or if you'd like to sit over in the chair, it's a really comfortable chair. And I try to make it where it's very relaxing. Still professional, but I want them to relax and feel comfortable.
Okay.
I then am going to, even though I've already looked at the paperwork, I am going to go over the health history and say, you know, I understand you have no allergies, that's awesome, you know, and that you're concerned about your crossfight today. We'll go over a few things with that and try to explain to you what that is. Sometimes people don't know. Their dentists will say, you have a crossfight in class 2. They don't know what that means. I want to educate them, but not over-educate them where they become scared. I'm trying to read them. How are they reacting to what I'm saying?
Right.
So as they're sitting down, I say, one of my first lines that I like to say is, have you ever been to an orthodontist before, Ashley?
It's a great question.
I am asking that because I'm trying to find out. I'm fishing for, have you been to a second opinion already and you haven't told me that?
Right.
I am watching the parent and the child as I'm asking that. And the reason is because they'll be like, no. And the mom will be like, no. Now, if they have, they'll kind of they have this different body language and this different facial expression. And what I say then, no matter what the answer is, I like to ask you that because I like to let you know that an orthodontist is different than a dentist. We take different x-rays, we do different photos.
Awesome. And one of the things, Lynn, and we're going to, ladies and gentlemen, as you're watching this, we're going to do a second video here in a minute where I'm just going to have Lynn go through and pretend like she's with a patient. And we're going to start with everything from the tour. We'll start at the tour, and then we're going to actually have you go through your typical questions. But what I love about you doing that, Lynn, there's 2 things I love about what you just did there. One is you find out which one of the most critical elements of have you been to see another orthodontist. Now, one of the things I would love to see you guys do too is get your front desk person to ask that question.
Right.
as they're going.
We have talked about that.
Yeah, because it helps arm you.
Right.
You know, and one of the easiest ways to say that, it's my third step, is after I've gotten their, you know, how they hear about us, is this a good number to reach you? Have you been through this process before? And it's really good because they can say, well, yeah, you're the 17th orthodontist we're calling, right? Or we've never been through this, or my 2 other kids have been through, and whatever.
We're a little familiar with it already.
That's right. And so if there's a place on the check sheet for me to put that, on the, either I create a spot on the health history or something, it arms you even better where you could say, oh, I notice you've been, or hey, I see this is the first time you've been in, let me tell you what's different about an orthodontist. Yeah, what to expect. But I love that you do that. And I think one of the things that I think is really important about the orthodontic experience is Mom and Ashley have absolutely no idea the difference between a dentist and an orthodontist. They don't know what's going to happen, that all they know is my teeth are crooked. And so it sounds like what you're already starting to do is establish the difference, right? And what kind of things do you talk about at that point?
Typically at that point, I say the role of a dentist is for your dental health.
Right.
You know, the job of an orthodontist is more for straightening and, you know, facial symmetry, making sure that your bite is correct functionally, and the benefit of cosmetics.
Right.
Typically, you know, when you have a patient that comes in, you can tell. I mean, this is a functional problem that needs correction. This is more of a cosmetic issue.
Right.
It's most times a combination of both. It's a win-win.
Right.
You know, you have functionality issues that, you know, your bite is really off, but then the benefit of that is cosmetically we're going to make you beautiful.
Right.
It makes your oral hygiene better.
Right.
So I try to educate them as far as when I'm asking that question, there's kind of 2 parts to that.
Okay.
The part of, have you been to a second opinion?
Sure.
And then the part of letting them know kind of what to expect today. So from that question, I typically will say, you know, depending on who I'm talking with, you know, generally we see a lot of kids, but we have a lot of adult patients now too. That's growing in our practice. So I typically like to say, in this hour, you know, or sometimes I won't even say that. It kind of just depends on if they're running late,
right,
you know, or whatever the circumstances are, sure. You know. And I have another one right behind. I will say I will take some photographs of you. I call it a modeling session. Now, for the kids that are like the teen, they like that. They think that's funny. Yeah. And I say, have you ever been a model before? And I'll try to just kind of
break the ice.
Yeah, just let them get a little more comfortable. And usually the parents will chuckle at that. And I'm trying to let them know, like, let's be comfortable. Let's talk.
So at that point,
I say, you know, we're going to start photos, you know, and you know, I guide them and just instruct them on what photos I'm taking and why I'm taking them, because I want them to understand the importance of what I'm trying to obtain from them.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm going to take some in the chair, you know, I'll have you open up your mouth. I explain my instruments to them. These are cheek retractors. These are what we call occlusal mirrors. This is a dental mirror. Have you ever seen this? Because if you haven't, you know, and I kind of joke with them about a dental mirror. This is the director. You know, it's basically an orthodontic ruler. I tell them the doctor, you know, and I let them know before he even comes in here, because that's the big fear for kids.
What are they going to do?
What is that, and what are you going to do with that? Because that looks sharp.
Right.
You know, and I explain the instruments to them, explain why the doctor's going to be using them, and then they're at ease. They're like, oh, okay, wow. The parents really like that.
Okay.
They have told my child what they're going to do and why.
Right.
What happens with a child that has anxiety? That is what the parent's looking for.
Sure.
If it's on the health history form, anxiety, even if it's not, it's just a good information to set for them so that they know kind of what's going on.
Right.
After we take that, I say, now I'm going to go take the x-rays. Typically at that point...
Are you to walk in the back for that?
Yep,
Somebody
we're
else
going to walk.
Okay.
No, I'll take them out. Typically with that, what I like to let the parents do at that time is we have a media consent form, an authorization form letting them know this is what we will do with your photos if you allow us.
Okay.
Put them on our Facebook, show them to other patients that have similar cases.
You do that right up front.
Right when I'm getting, so kind of depending on the age again, you know, with an adult, obviously I just explain the forms to them, but it's the HIPAA Privacy Act form.
Sure.
I like to obtain that right away. It's an insurance disclaimer form that tells them how your insurance is going to pay out. As many practices know, insurance, if you drop your plan and they have not paid out their benefit, they stop paying if you've dropped your policy. So it kind of explains to them what happens with that. So I have 3 forms. Typically, I'll get ready to say, Ashley, you know, we're going to go and take your x-rays, and Mom is going to have some homework. Well, the kids think that's funny. So, Mom, these are your homework pages, and we'll be back in just a moment. And do you have any questions? Let me know. You know, we kind of go out of the room and take the x-rays. I then load those photos and those x-rays into the computer. typically I pull them up. Our computer's pretty big, pulls them up. They can see, you know, a lot of parents are like, wow, are those my teeth or are those her teeth? You know, they've never seen them in that position before if they haven't gone to a second
I want to back you
opinion.
up for a second. Now, keep in mind when I say this, I picked you guys on purpose because you guys do an incredible job. But I'm also trying to give you some feedback on some things, okay? So, everything's awesome to this point, right? You walk them out though, here's the first thing I'm thinking about. I've got mom in here doing her homework. Now when I look at you, and you guys have a beautiful office, but when I look in this office, if I'm sitting mom in here and I'm out of here, what does she have to look at?
Okay, so that's the other part. So we have the forms, then I also have a video. The video, it can be either, in one of our offices, we have just kind of a fun video that has a little background music. And basically all that is patients that we've treated, their thumbs up, they've gotten their braces off, they have their beautiful smile. Patient parties that we've done, contests that we've done. And it's kind of just a quick flash of different pictures changing, and that's going on.
They can see it.
They can see that. We can turn this around, they watch it, they see it, they hear it.
Why is that important?
It lets them know how we treat our patients, what fun we have here, how important you are to us, the time that we invest in you. We want you to be here, we want you to enjoy your experience.
To me, Lynn, I think it's one of the most important components of leaving them in this room. One of the things I find in a lot of practices is this room is very sterile. It's not to pick on physicians, but it's like, let's go into a physician's office and there's just no...
What are we doing here? Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so if I have a chance to engage them electronically, whether that's a digital picture frame that just has that going all the time.
And we do have that in some of our offices as well. But we also have a SureSmile video and a lingual, you know, that is a video that tells them a little bit about a process of SureSmile that we use. It's a wire system, basically, that straightens teeth, a little bit more precision for treatment. It gives them a little, it's basically a news broadcast that Dr. Bankhead and Dr. Rodabaugh did a few years ago. And it goes through the process of us being broadcast on Channel 5 News here in St. Louis, which was a big thing. So it kind of lets them know, this is what the product is, this is how it works, this is why we like this product, and we want to introduce it to you. So that is also playing in some of our offices. So kind of typically, depending on what the patient's needs are, if it's a 7-year-old and they're really scared, and I know by taking my photos, we're not going to do anything. They have no laterals yet. We're going to monitor this child. I'm going to put on the fun video with the pictures clipping, you know, and the little music and the little song in the background that's something.
So you'll customize it based on the experience of the patient.
Right, and if I know that this is a patient that is, you know, they've already said, how long is this going to take? I really, you know, I don't want to wear, you know, I don't know if I want to wear braces. I don't know, you know, that would be a different video. So I kind of leave that up to the treatment coordinator to say, what should you play for them?
Well, that's good, but you have options.
Yes, right, yes.
So that'll go on, you walk them out, you as the treatment coordinator walk them out and get their x-rays done. After the x-rays are done, then what happens?
They come back in the room, we talk for just a few moments. Typically with that, at that point, and you have to watch this. I mean, some of our treatment coordinators are not quite there yet as far as knowing you're going to need an expander. The doctor I'm working for likes to do expanders, or he will not do an expander on this case. Sometimes you have to watch what information you do give. Let the doctor give them some of that information. Let some of that become from the doctor, that clinical information, the diagnosis.
Yeah, you don't have, sometimes I see treatment coordinators want to get really into that because they feel like that gives credibility to them. Unfortunately, sometimes you take some of the power away from the doctor.
Right. Like the doctor's repeating the same thing that Lynn just told us. Right. So you kind of want to leave, you know, your areas. You want to blend together, but you want to leave them a little bit open for the doctor to talk about his part. So what I do at that point is I say, you know, what did you think of the video? And you know, interact a little bit with that. You know, that was really neat, really good information. I can let the doctor know. They were very impressed with the SureSmile video. They, you know, they're very comfortable in the room. Mom seems like she's ready to start today. Mom's very apprehensive. She's had 3 opinions. So I am briefing the doctor. So before I leave the room, you know, do you have any questions for me? Anything that you're concerned about? So I'm going to let Dr. Bankhead know that you're ready, and he'll come in and he will talk to you about your photos and your x-rays and let you and Mom know what he would recommend for you.
Got it.
At the end of that, I will go over all your financial options with you, payment plans, your insurance benefits, and they're like, oh, okay. Because when I'm coming back from taking that x-ray, that is what their parent is thinking.
Of course.
How much is this going to cost me? They're thinking that before they're thinking that the whole entire time they're here. So I let them know.
Let me ask you a question.
Don't ask the doctor that question. I'm going to be going over that with you.
You tell them that.
Yep.
Hey, okay, good. So, and you just do it in a little bit of a different spot. So here's what's really good about what you're doing. So one of the things, Lynn, that I think is really important for the treatment coordinator to do is to set the expectation of the appointment.
Right. This is what I'm going to be doing today.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, Gary, depends on what I'm reading from
Right.
them.
Oh, of course.
What are they saying to me so far? I'll get that in there at some point, and definitely before I leave to go get the doctor.
Good.
Because
So you'll let him
I don't
know.
want him to talk finances.
Right. And I've talked to the doctor about that a
Right.
little bit, because he
Okay.
will.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah,
don't do that.
yeah, because he's a
Right.
very engaged, you know,
Right.
specifically Dr. Bankhead, and
Right.
Dr. Rotoba's a great guy too. They're just different personalities. And you give Dr. Bankhead an opportunity to talk about it, he'll engage.
Yes.
And so I think it's good to keep the doctor, my opinion is, and you can tell me if I'm full of BS or not,
Mhm.
I'd rather the doctors never talk about money.
Never. Right, exactly. 100% agree.
In fact, not even to know I don't even know how much, you know,
Right.
almost to the point where I don't even know. That's,
Right.
Lynn knows all that, I
So
don't even know.
one of the things that Dr. Rotoba does that I really like is when the parent even if I've said,
Hey, don't talk to him about the money, because,
right, well, but I mean,
How do you
even if I
position
have
that?
said to, I'm very comfortable to tell them,
so give me an
please
example.
don't talk about money with them. I've already know what's going on with this. And the doctor's like, okay, but what Dr. Rotoba will do is even if I've said, you know, when I come back in the room, you know, the doctor will go over all your treatment plan, he'll go over the photos and x-rays with you, and at the end, we'll go over all your payment options and treatment fees with you, your insurance benefits, and explain everything with you. And so you'll have everything today that you would need to know, and you know, that kind of thing. Okay, I go out, I go get the doctor, they come back in, she's like, well, how much is this gonna cost me?
Right.
And Dr. Rotoba, and I love when he does this, he goes, well, I'm the doctor, I'm really good at this, and Lynn is really good at doing the financing, so she'll go over all that with
Love
you and
that.
all of your treatment fees.
Love it.
Love that. With Dr. Bankhead, I usually have to look at him and be like, don't say anything. I'm like, I'm floating. Don't say anything. With the other two, they've really conformed. They
Yeah.
know. We've kind of guided them to say, you know, when that question arises, please refer them back to the treatment
And
coordinator.
I actually love it for the doctor, because it takes the pressure off the doctor
Right.
too.
Right.
You know, the doctor
Right.
doesn't have to feel like he or she has to justify costs or anything.
Right.
Let my treatment coordinator do
Right.
that. I love that response.
Mhm.
I think that's great advice. And so they come in, the doctor comes in, they build rapport with the patient and the mom, they look at the photos, they look at the
Right.
x-rays, then what happens? They just kind of walk them through the
So
diagnosis.
then they'll say, let's go over to the chair, and then he will basically call out clinical notes to me. You know, what are their midlines, what is their overjet, what is their overbite, what is their, you know, they need a frenectomy, they have a diastema. He'll basically call out everything and so I will let them know before I go get him, when I'm explaining the instruments on the tray. I will say, really, it's very easy, it's open up, bite down, don't bite his finger, you know, and I kind of joke, you know, sometimes, depending on, again, who it is.
Sure.
So they already kind of know, this is gonna be easy, this isn't gonna hurt. He's calling out the clinical notes to me, I'm entering them in as he goes. It's basically just a drop-down box, and you just keep clicking the appropriate, you know, what he's called out to me.
Right.
At that point, he'll say, do you have any questions for me? You know, is there anything that you're concerned about? Most of the time, by the time that you have finished as a treatment coordinator saying, this is some of the things that we see, and the doctor has talked about it with the photos and the x-rays, and he's really gone through each photo and explained what he sees in each photo.
Mm-hmm.
He's now called that information out more in a clinical, you know, verbiage.
Sure.
You know, where they're not going to understand a lot of what we're saying. And we
Right.
usually, you know, a lot of times he's like, and I'm going to call out some things to Lynn that you're not going to understand, but
He
it's
tells
all
them,
the things
yeah.
that we've talked about in your photos and your x-rays
That's
to kind of put them at ease. You've heard this before, but in a different
Yeah.
language. Then you know, usually the child will come back over and sit down, and the doctor will say, you know, if you have any
Where's
questions,
doctor
he
at this
answers,
point?
kind of standing right here.
And you're sitting there?
Mhm, yep.
Okay.
He will then say, do you have any questions? You know, if they do, he answers them. If he doesn't, you know, if they have no questions, he shakes their hand, nice to meet you, thank you for coming in today, we look forward to having you here. We're already assuming you're coming.
Yeah,
When
it's
I'm
a
teaching you how to
assumption.
check in,
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're
Yeah.
already going to be here. I need to let you
body
know how
language
this
is already
goes.
assuming that
Right.
moving forward. I
Right.
love that. And so then he says that, then what happens?
Then he shakes their hand and he leaves the room, and then I say, let's go, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, how much is it going to cost?
Because sometimes they don't want to ask the doctor.
Oh, that's very true.
So I always try to say, do you have any questions for me? You know, Ashley, do you have any concerns about anything the doctor said? And
Right.
you know, she'll say yes or no or whatever. And
What's a
sometimes
typical answer you'll hear there? If there is a question, what do you
usually
hear?
no.
Usually no.
And if it's a question, they'll say, well, do I have to, is it going to hurt? Or do I have to get retainers? Or do I have to get teeth pulled? Those are some of their,
Okay.
those are their concerns.
Right.
Most cases, you know, we're not a big extraction family
Unless you
here.
have to, yeah.
You know, unless we absolutely have to, and we explain to them why. You know, this is your bone structure. Your teeth have to sit in bone to stay in your mouth.
Right.
So we'll kind of explain that to them, but we try to. I'm trying to sense this child's very nervous.
Okay.
And that's something when I leave this room after I take those X-rays and I go out and I brief the doctor.
You kind of let the doctor
This is
know.
what I say. Ashley Johnson is 13 years old. Dr. Brent, she does have class 2. She has a crossbite. The dentist is concerned about that. Dentist is Dr. Siddiqui. Her last dental visit was in October. She had nothing pending at that time. Due for another visit. She does have 2 younger siblings. Mom's had braces and extractions before, Dad has not. This information is important because I have seen parents where you're going to come in and say you need 4 bites extracted, and the parents have never had their teeth extracted. Oh no, you're not going to extract teeth out of my child. That's a bad thing. Now, Mrs. Sharon Johnson's had extractions done, and we say Ashley's going to probably need some extractions done. She's going to be, oh okay, yeah, I had that done. I know exactly, right.
So that's nice for you to know that
those
information.
things, right. So I try to collect as much
great.
information as I can. Now, if it's an adult patient and they're, in here, my questions to them are, so I go out and I brief the doctor, the x-ray, she's missing a tooth,
Right.
she has all 4 of her wisdom teeth.
Yep.
Mom's worried about that, so address that when you're in the exam. Even though it's not even something, if they're 13, we don't worry about that till they're 18 or, in their 18 to 20s.
Right.
But it's something that, go ahead and mention that, because I've mentioned that to the doctor
Right.
and to the parent, and they're going to want you to address it with them, Dr. Bankhead, so
Sure.
please mention that to them.
Sure.
Things like that.
Awesome.
I'm trying to get as much information about them. If it's an adult, I want to tell Dr. Bankhead. They're worried about the cosmetic visual of, do they see these braces? Do they see the appliances we're using to straighten
So
their
you're just giving the
Okay.
doctor all the ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. Let me move over here for a second. Great. So when you so after you've done all that, Lynn, and you've been very thorough, and doctor has shaken their hand and said, can't wait to work with you. He's assuming.
Right.
He walks out. Is the door closed at this point?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
And you guys are in here, and then you prompt. Is there any questions you have? Most of the time, it's no. Then what happens?
Then I have already, before I ever went to the front to give them their tour, I have loaded what we call our payment option sheet.
Okay.
I have their information in there, I have their insurance in there. The only thing I have not plugged in is their solid fee.
Okay.
That is because at that time, I don't know yet
If you're
if the
doing
doctor is
SureSmile,
going to
if
be doing
you're-
Sure Smile or frenectomy, if we're going to
Just
need
don't know
to do
yet.
laser, micro implant, what we might need to do.
Right.
So that is like
A
2
lot,
seconds
okay.
that it takes me to plug in that number, and then I start to print that document out.
And when do you have a copy of one, or at least what does it kind of look like?
Let me see here. Let me see if I do. Hold on here, sorry. I could have had that right fine.
No, I just was curious because I'm like a lot of people out there will ask me about. They will ask
So
me
it's
about.
like this.
Okay, so
so-
the audience can't see that, but they have on their sheet what kind of braces it is, patient's name, length of term, insurance coverage, and then they have 2 payment options listed, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the 2 payment options. Can you just walk me through that?
So typically, let's just say that this
And do you
was.
turn that around for them to look at, or do you print it?
I usually do not. I usually print it.
Okay, so usually I'm printing
But
it.
then if when I'm presenting these options, I sense their body language, I'm looking and I'm watching their facial expressions, I'm looking at their body language.
Okay.
What am I reading here?
Uh-huh.
I have to create value in what I'm proposing here.
Okay,
So I'm going to say, your total treatment fee is $5,000
and you're
today.
typically showing that on
I'm
here.
doing this.
Okay.
So I will say,
You'll walk them through
your
it.
treatment fee is $5,000 today, for simplicity.
Right,
And we do have a couple options that are really nice. I'd like you to take advantage of if you have the opportunity to pay in full. We give you a 5% discount. This can be done through an FSA card, which is a flexible spending
Right.
account, or an HSA, a health savings account, which is a nice benefit. You're saving 5% and you're using pre-tax income, pre-tax dollars. I said, or option 2, you have an option of doing a down payment of $600, and you have.
what's typical for down payment that you guys ask for?
Typically, we like to be around $600.
That's your number?
Now, that's my go-to number. That's going to be in this sheet when I plug it in.
Okay.
It just automatically is in there. It's a default.
Okay,
If I want to change that, I just go in and change.
what are the doctors, how much flexibility do they give you guys on down payment?
Basically, that is determined by credit rating.
Okay,
Okay, so if I have a patient that has an A credit, and I'm looking at this, you have an A credit and you have 2 younger siblings behind you.
yeah,
Now,
I'm thinking about
I'm
future.
gonna win this first one, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking about future money
course.
as well.
Sure,
So
sure.
I wanna make this work for you.
Right,
So a lot of times I'll just pop in that 600. If they have a 24-month treatment plan, I wanna get my money in 18 months, let's just say.
right,
I don't wanna stretch it out.
sure,
So I will say, 18 monthly payments of $180 or whatever it's gonna be. I will then say, I'm watching them. And then they'll be like, okay, all right, well, we'll probably do this option 2, and most people do. Some people are like, oh, no, we'll pay in full right away. Depends on the time of year. Have they signed up? Do they have insurance benefits?
Sure.
Do they have tax return time coming up? You know, is it this tax season? Is it bonus time for them, for their employer? So a lot of those factors kind of play into that. So I'm kind of watching that, and I know, you know, February, March, April, you know, that's tax time. I know a lot of people will take advantage of this. If they kind of start, okay, oh wow, you know, I'm like, I will start to say, this does include everything. It includes your retainers, broken brackets, broken wires, all of your treatment visits, and we like to let you know those appointments are 20 minutes, you know, every 4 to 6 weeks. The treatment here you will receive is phenomenal.
Right.
And I will tell that, and I will go into all 3, and at some time during this exam, I will, depending on conversation and how it flows, I will always try to plug in. All 3 of my daughters were patients here before I ever worked here, so I can speak from a parental view as well as an employee. And I will tell you, you know, and I go into a little bit about our clinical team. You know, when I was in our Wentzville office, I would say all of our clinical team is expanded function. That's the highest level of skill and knowledge level that you can receive as an orthodontic assistant. I will say things like, Jill's been here 20 years, you know, Sarah's been here 18 years, and you know, they know, and I said, these girls have an uncanny ability to deal with children. They're awesome. And
you built that into your somewhere in your process, but you get to payment. Let's say you get to this payment, and then you see some form of
hesitation.
Then what?
They're backing up. And I have no problem saying, are you more concerned with your monthly payment or your down payment? Because I'd like to make this work for you.
Okay, perfect.
What is your concern? My concern is, I need some money down, but I want to know the longevity. Are you going to be able to create what's the word? Budget.
Okay.
Sorry about that. A budget that you can make these payments to us. I mean, I don't want to start treatment for someone and make it not work, because I don't want to put a sour taste in their mouth when they've got 2 siblings behind, or neighbors and friends, family, coworkers. I want this to be a good experience for them, and I want it to work for them.
So let's say they say this, Lynn. We're going to talk about this later. But we're almost ready to wrap this up before we do the tour. But when they get to the part, because we want to talk about payments and things like that separately, but I want the audience to hear this. So if, let's say, it's a, you know, $6,000 treatment fee with $600 down, so they have $5,400 over 18 months, and I don't have my calculator in front of me, but whatever that number ends up being, you know, so let's call it, you know, $280 a month or whatever it is, and you see some hesitation, and you ask them, is it the down payment, is it the monthly payment? They say, well, you know, the monthly payment, it's a little more than I was thinking. Then what do you say?
Okay. So I have given myself a 6-month padding. It's a 24-month treatment plan. I've offered them 18 months.
You always start at 18.
Right. I'm always going to start a little bit less than what their treatment length is.
Okay.
Because I can pad that a little bit now.
Right.
I can go out a little bit more and make those a little cheaper. My first question is going to be, if you had to come up with a number that is a possible, you know, that is something that you can pay monthly, what would that number be?
And let's say
it's not 280. Let's say it's 180.
Okay. Okay. They say that.
Now I have So now I have, and I explain to them this option 2 is interest free. It's just basic math.
Right.
And I will use those words, and they're like, okay, they get it. They like to hear interest free.
Sure. Yeah.
So then what I'm saying, I'll now spin this around. So now I'm not looking at what I've printed.
Now you're playing with this
absolutely
number.
right. So now I'm going to play up here, and I'm going to plug in, and I'm going to say, you know, whatever I take off, I can help you in 2 ways. It's going to add a little bit to your down payment. So I don't know if that's a concern for you, or if we can, you know, maybe.
Love to keep the down payment right where it's at.
Right. So now I'm going to stretch it out 6 months and see if I can get a little bit closer.
Okay. And so you'll start there and say, okay, well, we can take it to here. How does that look?
Right. I mean, if they're an A credit, I'll go out 24 months.
Right.
If they are not an A credit, that's where it becomes a little more difficult, because I'm going to want to get the most money down I can. I want to get we're a business.
Sure.
And, you know, I want to give them great care, and they'll have a wonderful experience here, but we need to also be paid because we're a business.
Sure.
And so, you know, so what I'll do at that point, like say it's a C credit, I might be requesting they put $1,500 down. I'm also going to look, what kind of insurance do they have? Do they have a $1,500 benefit? Okay, that's $3,000. I'm only out $2,000 now that I have to worry about putting into a monthly payment.
Right.
If it's a 24-month, sometimes I'll start at 18 and try to see if that's going to work. If not, there are times families are like, I don't have it. I had no idea it was going to be this much. I kind of go to Plan B then with them.
Okay.
And that's a credit rating issue. Plan B plan is, I know that sounds kind of sorry. What that plan would be is, how about if we start with what we call a slow start? Now, I don't say slow start to that patient, but in my mind, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
How would it work for you, this is May, if we started doing where you just, no denomination required, no due date required, but you start paying us and we build a credit onto your account. Once you come up to a certain dollar amount, then we can start treatment. Would that work for you? Because a lot of these people that have bad credit, they don't know how to manage their money. They don't know how to get that. I might suggest you have someone that you can borrow the money from. Like, would your parents help you, grandparents, you know, do you have anyone that would help you?
Walk me back to
Care
the
credit.
build up credit part.
Okay,
How does that, let they say, yeah, that's a good idea, what would you suggest?
So, what I will suggest is, what can you feasibly come up with?
$100 a month.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you pay $100 every month. There's no specific due date. I've taken that pressure off of them, but yet I'm taking some of their money. So I'm hoping they're gonna be with us.
You're right.
They're gonna have some loyalty. You know, hey, these people are really working with me. I'm gonna plan that, and we'll say, you know, after 6 months, you know, maybe we're around tax time. Do you have the capability of getting a flexible spending account through your employer at the end of October for January, and we can plan to start in January?
And you're holding this money for them, creating
Right.
credit, which I love because you're locking them in.
Right.
And then they come back and say, why don't we do this? You're not ready, you know, you're having struggles. Let's, you know, you can't figure out how to make this work. Why don't we do this? Let's create a
I don't want to
payment
set
plan.
you up for something that's not going to work for you.
Right. So in
I'll
6
say
months,
that.
we'll have collected this money. Let's get
Right.
back together.
And let's reconvene and see where we are then at that point.
And do people like that option?
Yes, yes they do.
Okay.
Not a lot of people use it. The
Right.
ones that really are like, I really want to get my child treatment, they will do it.
Okay.
Right.
And that's worked for you?
Yes.
And then they come back in, you've established some money that's been paid in,
Mm-hmm.
and then what
Right.
happens?
And then once that money's been paid in, we take that 600 off. And a lot of times what I try to get them to do is, okay, now you have your 600 there, but I would like a little bit more down. And that's where I'm looking at, can you do an FSA account? Do you have a tax return? Do you ever get a bonus? Is there anybody that could borrow, you could borrow $500 from at this point? You know, keeping in mind that, you know, you're gonna borrow that 500, you're gonna have to pay that back as well as your monthly payment that I'm now starting with you because you're
Right.
starting. So I mean, you kind of have to,
Sure.
you know, really like kind of devil in and see where are your
trying to make it work.
finances, right?
Yeah.
And I'm letting them know, hey, I want to work with you. I want this to work for you. We want to help you. I think when you just say, this is it, that's
Yeah.
it,
What do you
and
think?
just
Yeah.
let us know.
Yeah.
No, you've totally just deflated their bubble and their hope.
Right.
So letting them know that you're going to work with them, and let's play around with some numbers. I mean, you know, a lot of times I don't like to do this, but sometimes I'll say, you know what, I'm going to take $100 off. I'm going to give you a $100 discount. It's not a lot, it's something. It's something that makes them feel better.
Right.
They're acknowledging, they know I'm working. I have now extended your treatment payment plan. I have now taken off $100 or whatever number you
Right.
want. I mean, depending on what you
Sure.
can play
Right,
with. I
right,
mean,
right.
I know she has 2 little sisters behind her, or you know, I'm trying to think that way. I want them to know that we work with you.
Right.
Do I want to promote a lot of bad credit patients? No, not really. No one does.
Sure.
You have trouble getting the money
Of course,
from
of
them.
course,
But
of
if
course.
you work with them and they know that you've been, you know, working with them, helping them, coming up with suggestions, not just this is it, here you go.
Right.
They're more apt to start with you, and they're more apt to be loyal to you.
Got it.
Now you do have to watch at that point too. Are they going to go for that second opinion where they're going to totally lowball the fee to get those people? That's a gamble that you kind of have to watch and take, and that's part of, have they been somewhere before?
Of course.
What's their situation?
Right.
Every patient is different. You
Right.
have to treat them. You can't go in with every single person and the robot, you know, presentation begins. I mean, you
Right,
have to be more personalized. So,
Well, I love that you do that. I love that you're not afraid to get into and dig into the payment component. And so that's all. What about, last point before I close this out? So they're in here. Do you guys ever set aside time in case they want to do a today start?
yes.
So tell me about
That
that.
is morning huddle.
Okay.
See how important that
That
is?
is important.
So we will say, you know, in the morning, especially in the summer, when the kids are off school, or even if they're like on a holiday break through school, I will say, do we have any room for same days? Now I can look at that myself and know.
Sure.
I pull up, you know, our
Right.
schedule and I'll hit. Let me
You
see
can
here.
kind of look at
I can
it.
kind of look and say,
Mhm.
okay, you know what? Whoops. Sorry.
Oh, no
I was up
worries.
and have a little dot down there, and it wasn't it. So I can kind of pull this up and say,
Do you look at your schedule?
I look at the
And
schedule.
you can see
See
if there's
right
a
here?
window, yeah.
So I have an exam, let's just say I have an exam at 9 a.m. Wow, I have this full spot. So I will talk to the treatment, you know, I'm the treatment coordinator will talk to the clinical coordinator and say, hey, if they want to do a same-day banding, can I do it at this at 10:15? Does that work for you? And they're like, oh yeah, totally, you can do that, Lynn, you know. Or I might say, do you mind going and having lunch, and we could have you come back in the afternoon if that works better for you.
Do you offer that? So if you know you have a window, and
if you'd like to get them on today, since you're already here, we can save you the trip of 2 appointments.
So you make that, and how often do they take advantage of that?
I would say, depending on the doctor, Dr. Bankhead has that happen a lot. There are times where they all do it. It's kind of like a euphoria. They're like, wow, I did it, I got a same day. So yeah, we try to do that, if possible, and if the patient wants it. And some patients, you know, you'll just kind of know, like, they're like, okay, well, I need to go home and talk to Dad.
Yeah.
You know, getting back to I do want to get back to this really fast. Getting back to the payment option sheet.
Yeah.
When they say, oh, okay, no, well, I'm going to have to talk to my husband. Oh, no, that's totally fine. Now, I'm going to tell you what I do.
Okay.
I hit Command B. I'm already looking at the schedule. I might go out a week or two. And I'm already going to say, you know what, I want you to take this home. You don't have to decide on this today. These are things that I think you should, definitely agree. You need to talk to your husband about. You know, and that way you can decide if you'd like to take advantage of saving the 5%, or if you'd like to just do the interest-free.
Right.
Try to give the bullet points on those 2 payment options. Or if there's something that works better for you, I'd like you to call me. You know, if you'd rather put more money down, or if you'd like to go out a little bit, we can do that for you.
Okay.
If it's an A or B credit. I'm already pulling it up and saying, what does it look like for the 20th? For the first appointment, there's 2 appointments, and I've already kind of told them this as well. There are 2 appointments to doing these braces, or if it's an Invisalign, this impression will take about 20 to 30 minutes.
Right.
I kind of brief them on what to expect again, kind of like explaining my instrument tray. I'm explaining them what they're going to have done when they do these 2 appointments, how long those appointments take. We do records and spacers that takes about 20 minutes. Then the second appointment we do about 5 to 7 days.
So you're already
and then
committing
hour
them,
and
even though
15.
they want to go home and talk about it.
Right.
You're already committing to.
I don't even acknowledge that. I'm like, that's what I want you to do. I want you to go home and talk to Dad.
Now let's talk about when you're coming back.
So then when you're coming back with that, would this 10 to 15 work?
Yeah,
for you?
that'll work.
Okay, let's put you in there, and then we're going to go to the next week. So I'm going to write these down for them, and then I'll say, let's look at the 27th. So on the 27th, I have, and then I'm hoping I have something.
Yeah.
This schedule I don't. So we'll go back to Monday, but I'll look at the schedule and I'll say, I have this day.
So you're still going back into the assumptive.
Right.
And so let's say you get them to commit to those tentative dates. They go to leave, they want to talk about it, and just briefly, because we'll talk about this separately, but what's the follow-up process?
So with that, once we schedule those 2 appointments, when they're leaving, I'll just say, I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. If you have any questions, please call me. If your husband has any questions for myself or the doctor, please call. We'd love to make sure that we answer all your questions and that you have all the information that you need, or that you would like, or however you want to word it. At that point, the day before, it's the front desk team will call and say, we send out an email reminder as well, but for the bandings, we do like to call and say, follow up phone reminder appointment type thing. The system that we use is T-Link, it's Televox, and it's an automated system, so we try to obtain their email address, which gives them an appointment reminder.
Right.
So typically, they'll come in at that next appointment, we do all their financial paperwork with them at that appointment, they go back, the child goes back to the clinic, they do their records, and off they go, and next appointment.
So here's what we're going to do, Lynn. That was really informative, and so I'm going to stop the recorder at this point.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do is that's going to conclude this first session. So really what I wanted to do for the audience this month was just have them hear kind of what you do.
Okay.
And then I'm going to build on to that either for the following month and use this next step for the June webinar, where I'm going to show them what your actual tour looks like. I'm going to show them what the role play looks like, and have you actually just do it, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Okay, does that work?
Yep.
All right.